Redditors who have hired a private investigator. What did you find out? Hadn't heard from my mom since I was about 15. Very unstable due to drugs and alcohol etc. When I was 29 I decided it was time to find out what happened to her. I figured if she was a Jane Doe somewhere then I could put her to rest. And if she was alive then I wanted to let her know that I forgave her. Hired a pie to help. I guess she was moved by my story, and so she also ran info for the man my mother was apparently married to on the house. And with one clue from his report I was able to track them down. I wouldn't have found my mom alive and was just starting out on recovery after being homeless and addicted for many years if it wasn't for the pie who kindly ran an extra report for free. Mom has remained sober now for about 7 years and is probably the healthiest she's ever been. Physically and emotionally. So happy it got better for both of you. Exclamation mark. My sister, mid-30s, is adopted and hired one to find her estranged biological father. They came back saying that not only was he still alive and nearby, but he had a daughter, meaning she also had a biological sibling. Further digging from the pie uncovered that they weren't just similar ages either. They were exactly the same age. The evidence suggested that my sister had a twin and her birth father had taken the twin and vanished. Huge, life-changing news. Eventually, through more incredible detective work, the pie realized that the daughter was actually just my sister. There was no other sibling, and they had just been investigating my sister the whole time accidentally. Needless to say, we asked for the money back. TL. Doctor, sister hired a private investigator. Private investigator accidentally investigated sister. Well, did you get the money back? I think we got some of it back. Yeah. To be fair to the pie, they did find the guy with very little to go on before the fuss started. To be more fair though, a few years later I found him again. Myself. After an hour on the internet. I bet the internet and social media has killed the pie industry. Almost everybody has some kind of online presence. Criminal activity can often be found online depending on where you/they live, etc. But there must be some stuff that you can online find with a pie, right? Not a pie myself, but I'm in a similar line of work. Pies would indeed have access to professional services that the public wouldn't have access to. For instance, tools that allow you to trace addresses and confirm dates of residence, phone numbers, email addresses, etc. I was a private investigator for a little bit. Most work pies do is searching financial/court records and serving documents. But one time I was paid by wealthy parents to stake out their college senior who had stopped returning their calls. They were worried about her. These parents paid like $40K for round-the-clock monitoring just to find out their daughter dropped out of school and was a full-time ski bum. BTW stakeouts are mostly just sitting in your car eating all day. Had a babysitter we thought was stealing from us. Luckily our neighbor was a pie couple and they ran a background check for $10. Babysitter had a string of DUIs and a few days before a large fine was due, my camera disappeared. He also stole money from my kids' piggy banks. He sort of disappeared, but was also really into Instagram, so I surreptitiously followed him. He started babysitting again for a single mom, easy target, and posted a lot of fun pics with this family. I tracked down the mom and sent her a long email detailing out his whole scam. She said we were right and it was clear he'd been stealing from her business. He has since gone underground, but I still Google him regularly to see what he's up to. Has been able to avoid arrests for a while now. Good thing he was gone before anything worse happened. So I learned a lot about con artists from this experience. He was not a child molester and was a genuinely nice and likable person. Very talented photographer and really good with kids. It was almost as if he thought he deserved what he stole because he had such a big heart. When I say he targeted single moms, he genuinely helped them as well by watching their kids and going the extra mile to be helpful. It was a very complex situation and I think that's common with these cases. People truly like the con artist and feel almost embarrassed to have been taken advantage of, so they often just go unreported. My mother's dad walked out on mom, my aunt, and my grandmother when mom was just 5. A few years later, My grandmother died of a grand mal seizure. Mom was taken in by her grandparents, but she always wondered why her dad left and what became of him. In her 40s, she saved up a bit and hired a pie to track him down. Turns out he moved over time from Pittsburgh to California, where he wound up in prison for armed robbery and so other violent crimes. He died in San Quentin Penitentiary. I think mom got a lot of closure out of that. She was able to see that life would have most likely been even worse had he stayed, at least living with her grandparents. She was loved and raised to fulfill her potential. God bless your grandparents. I hope I would be that strong in their situation. My wife and I are friends with a lot of bar owners and bartenders because of her job. We knew this one owner/tender. We will call him Dana. That was the nicest ducking guy. Like, if he knew you were sick, he would cover your shift at your bar and then give you the tips he made that night. Just the best guy. Then one night we are drinking with another bartender friend, Ben. Ben lets us know that Dana has brain cancer, has been keeping it quiet, but Ben has been giving him money, upwards of $5,000 for treatment. My wife and I were about to give money to Ben to pass on. Then Dana's business partner got suspicious and hired a pie to follow Dana on a day he took off for medical reasons. Turned out Dana spent the day drinking at another bar. No doctor visits. The business partner confronts Dana, who comes clean. He did not have cancer. He was just saying that to get money from his friends. Apparently lots of bartenders had been giving him money. Dana is more or less run out of town. He moved to a different city, and I know he slowly paid Ben back, but it took a couple years. I'm not sure what happens to him since. Not me, but my grandfather did. He was separated from his brother when the Japanese occupied China. My grandfather safely made it to Hong Kong and eventually to Canada. His brother made it to Singapore or Malaysia according to family friends back then. So my grandfather spent a good 5 years or so working with a pie to find his brother so they can be reunited. Sadly, with just a picture and the fact many people died in the war, it wasn't much to go on. My grandfather is still alive and always thinks of his brother. It's his wish to see him one more time. When I met my wife, she seemed to have a normal modern family. 2 moms, 2 dads. Over time it became apparent her stepdad wasn't around much. Holidays, birthdays, you name it. He'd pop in to say hi, grab a nap, whatever, then take off again. My wife's family thought this was normal, just the way it had always been since they were teenagers. He claimed to have a job following FedEx trucks around the state to prevent theft and drug trafficking. But I thought it strange and started making jokes about him having another family. Well, I guess it got my sister-in-law thinking, because she gets a favor from the pie at her law firm. Sure enough, he has not 2, but 3 wives around the state, and 5 other step-children between them. My sister-in-law breaks the news to her mother, who immediately changes the locks and files for divorce. They never speak again. Cold turkey. Divorce is even uncontested. As a fool, they also send the report to his other wives. That's disgusting. Also exhausting. In his 20s, Miso hired a pie to find out what had become of the childhood bully who had made his life hell and who had vowed to kill him. Actually, he did try by bringing a loaded gun to school, but some other kid ratted him out and the bully got expelled, but still lived in the neighborhood for a few more years and beat up Mai. So every chance he got, the pie found the bully living in a town more than an hour outside the big city, in a dead-end job. Had been arrested for assault and public drunkenness a couple times. That info helped Miso get past his fear that the guy would find him someday and make good on his threat. He brought a gun to school with the pre-established intent to kill someone, and all they did about it was expel him. Hey, I mean, you wouldn't think saying swipe no swiping would stop Swiper from stealing, but it does. So, my mom's best friend, she divorced her husband and was awarded full custody of their daughter. His family was a shit show. He kidnapped his daughter, and he and his parents just disappeared. This was easier in 1977 than it is now. Close bracket. She tried hiring a pie, but couldn't afford one. So she started learning how to trace people on her own. In the days before the internet, She spent years doing this whenever she wasn't waitressing. She did find her daughter in '81. But by this time her daughter was poisoned against her. Mom's friend went on to get her pie license and was a pie specializing in women's issues for the next 2 decades. I don't know what happened to her after that. If she's alive, she would be in her 80s I think. That must have been heartbreaking for her. I can't imagine my child being literally stolen from me and not knowing where they are for 4 years and not be able to get any help from the law. And when I finally found my child on my own merits they want nothing to do with me because their head has been filled with lies. I wish she sued the hell out of that family. Not mine specifically, but my mother hired one to spy on the school. See, my little brother is dyslexic and has severe social anxiety and so was struggling a lot in a public school setting. He had an IEP, which the teachers and principal were insisting was being followed. But every day my brother would come home in tears shaking because he felt abandoned and stupid. So mom hired the investigator. And sure enough the teachers were basically just ignoring my brother. They'd sit him in the back of the room and demand he do his work. Then wouldn't help him through it. Then they'd yell at him because he didn't do it again. He couldn't write because of the dyslexia. With all the evidence, my mom was able to arrange a meeting with the school board and threatened to sue. They agreed to pay his tuition for a private school that was supposed to help. It didn't. And mom ended up just pulling him out and homeschooling him. He's been doing a lot better. Did the pie pose as an elementary school kid? Hey fellow kids. Love that movie. My dad was cheating on my mom with 2 different old men. Both of them don't know about the other one. He says he isn't gay or anything. He's doing it for the money. He told us that he's in their wills and everything and that they're just friends. I don't believe it. How do you end up in a friend's apostrophe will? There's definitely something else going on, but he won't admit it. My mom calls him El Buta as a code word for him. It means a vulture in Spanish. Edit, spelling. I suppose it's probably pretty rare, but I've personally seen friends of relatives walk off with life-changing amounts of money from said relatives' wills. And as far as I know the relationships only went as far as usual friendship. Really they only had the odd talk on the phone around holidays towards the end. Sounds pretty extreme what your dad was doing. But honestly I could believe it. I also realize what a gamble that would be though. He could go through that believing he would get on a will, but can easily be written off near the end and never see a penny for going to such extremes to try to gain their favor. Exactly. I'm thinking that this dude promised my dad a bunch of money and he took the bait. My dad lives with him now, and I just waiting for him to die. He probably isn't going to give him a penny and he will have thrown away his family for nothing. My parents hired a private investigator to find out who my online BF was when I was 13. The pie came back and told us he was just a fat ass 13-yo. Funniest answer in the thread. I never hired one. But my husband is a private investigator and owns a pie business. I have also helped with some surveillance. So, very often, you do not find anything. There isn't anything to find. You have clients wanting to catch their spouses cheating, but they really aren't doing anything. Sometimes, you realize that the client is mentally ill and very paranoid. So we can hook up cameras in the house. But no one is really moving the furniture around or stealing. I will tell you that if my husband really believes it's mental illness, he will not take the job or will cease the job once this is suspected. They need a psychiatrist, not a pie, and has not cool with taking money from those people. He worked on a pretty high profile murder case. It involved several murders over a few years. My husband obviously knew a lot of inside stuff that never made it into the news. He found out a lot of interesting stuff there. He would read the web sleuths forum about the case and laugh at the armchair detectives. Sometimes I get to figure out that people's kids aren't really their kids, which is kinda sorta like the work that most private investigators do. High school BO teacher that teaches blood type inheritance. Oh god, I have such stupid stories about that. Not about the kids or teachers or doctors, but the parents. I know at least 2 sets of parents who just don't understand it. Fully grown adults who cannot grasp the simple concept. E.g., ab mom and dad have an A kid. They freak out, repeatedly yelling at a doctor for an hour over why isn't the kid either of their blood types. The kid inherits one or the other, right? Why isn't she AB or O? Question mark? Question mark? Is this the wrong kid you gave to us? Question mark? Did my wife cheat with someone who has A blood? Question mark? Like, my god. Even at the end of the session, they did not seem fully convinced. So yeah, no stories here of parents cheating. Only really dumb parents who think there's cheating. I know someone that hired a pet detective to find their cat and he duck and found him. Best spent cash ever. I hired a pie to follow the first pie I got to see if he was doing his job. Turns out the guy being followed by the first pie is actually you from the future, and the second pie is actually also you from further in the future. The first pie himself is just a regular dude, but he's gonna freak out when he learns what's going on. Plot twists everywhere. I'm a private investigator and I'll tell you that a lot of people are right. Your spouse is cheating on you. I feel like if you have the intuition and distrust to hire a pie to confirm your spouse is cheating, they probably are. Pretty much. Usually they want hard evidence for divorce court. Pretty sure my mom was scammed out of $200 by a private investigator. What was he supposed to investigate? When my father passed away, he had land and a few properties. My mother wanted the pie to help track down any other assets as they were in other states, and in Puerto Rico, he required a $200 or $300 deposit to start and never did anything. He finally called her back after a few weeks of dodging her and said he couldn't find anything. I was a teenager at the time and was able to find a deed for a home in Illinois and info on the property in PR within minutes online. Guy didn't do shit. I would have probably made much more than the deposit with just 5 minutes of work. Not me, but a friend hired one because he was suspicious his stepdad was being unfaithful to his mom. So he asked me, and I put him in contact with a guy I knew. Bit of a backstory. The stepdad is 510, 160-ish pounds. My friend is 62, 235 pounds. Ripped at 15. When my friend's mom and stepdad started dating, my friend gave her the typical "you hurt her, you're dead" speech. Also, his BO dad walked out on him and his sister when my friend was like 4. It took a while, but my friend warmed up to the guy and has a good guy took my friend and I to an 49's game once, which was pretty cool. Anyways, the pie said he wasn't cheating. Apparently there was a house on the market that my friend's mom wanted, and he bought it. He had been remodeling it for some time, and he kept it a secret as a 5-year anniversary gift to her. He bought it. Anyways, they live in a 5-bed house now. Hey PSSST, please subscribe and like.